Fighting is one of the coolest parts of anime, and in the past couple of years, we've been witnessing a fighting revolution. Tons of series showcasing some of the most epic battles in anime history. Iconic moments that have been living rent-free inside our heads long after the series ended. But in the middle of all that, there's been one anime has consistently made everyone lose their mind over every single fight. And that's Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, sure, the animation is absolutely gorgeous, but there are plenty of other anime out there with equally stunning visuals that don't even come close to this quality. So the real question is, why? What is it about Jujutsu Kaisen's fights that makes them stand out so much in a genre that's already packed with incredible action?
Flame breathing. Second form.
I want to start with the shonen series that kind of changed how we think about anime fights. Demon Slayer. Specifically, the Rengoku vs. Akaza fight, which is probably the perfect example of this. Akaza is this top 3 demon, while Rengoku is one of the strongest demon slayers. In terms of power, they're pretty close. But the problem is that demons' bodies are way more resistant than humans' bodies. Akaza is just going ham on Rengoku, but his real goal is to turn him into a demon. All he has to do is accept. And yet, even though he's getting annihilated, Rengoku absolutely refuses because it would betray everything he stands for. He keeps fighting, but in the end, just isn't enough. Obviously, the animation is insane, but it's about way more than that. It's about Rengoku's absolutely unbreakable spirit. The way he refuses to give up even when he's clearly outmatched. The moment he holds Akaza in place while protecting everyone behind him. The final attack accompanied by some of the most epic music in the entire series.
What an impressive fighting spirit.
A flashback that shows you his backstory and his big smile as he draws his final breath. This is kind of Demon Slayer's whole thing. It doesn't want you thinking about the mechanics or the strategy. It wants you to feel feelings. In Dragon Ball, we have one of the most legendary anime fights of all time. Goku versus Frieza. Goku is getting his butt absolutely handed to him. He tries everything and it just does not work. But then, Frieza makes a big mistake. He kills Krillin right there, Goku's best friend since they were kids, and there's nothing he can do to stop it. Goku's rage explodes. His hair turns yellow, lightning starts crackling everywhere, the entire freaking planet is shaking. He becomes the legendary Super Saiyan for the first time. This fight is so iconic that people who've never even watched Dragon Ball know about Super Saiyan. I mean, you could show this fight scene to someone's dog and they'd probably think it's cool. No smart plan defeated Frieza, just anger turned into power. From that point on, the actual fighting is just Goku demolishing Frieza. But what makes it unforgettable is all the drama behind it, turning the situation around. The look of pure terror in Frieza's eyes when he realizes he messed up. The satisfaction of finally seeing the underdog overpower the villain. These are the elements that define Dragon Ball battles, and they just hit you super hard. Luffy vs. Katakuri is easily one of the greatest fights in all of One Piece. At the start, Katakuri is better than Luffy at literally everything. He can see what Luffy's gonna do before Luffy even knows what he's gonna do. He's faster, stronger, more experienced. The dude is just objectively superior. But every time Katakuri knocks him down, Luffy just keeps getting back up. And he does this so many times that he slowly gets to the same level as his opponent until he wins. The most important moment in this fight isn't some smart strategy. It's Luffy standing back up when anyone else would have stayed down. It's the moment where we see Katakuri's past and how he's become the person he is now. It's the moment he literally hurts himself and finally reveals his face because he sees Luffy as an equal and respects him. The fight doesn't end with some crazy massive punch. It ends with Katakuri asking Luffy if he's gonna come back. And once he says he will, Katakuri falls on his back for the first time in his life, accepting that Luffy has earned this victory. Sure, One Piece definitely has some strategic moments during fights, especially early on when characters didn't have access to, all those bunch of different powers. But mostly, it's about characters breaking through their limits. And usually by the time a major fight even happens, the series has already spent dozens of episodes making you care about it so much.
さっきで僕の位置を巷では把握できまい
You know, people often criticize me for saying soul leveling is bad. Come on, guys. It's horrible. But listen, when it comes to pure hype, I genuinely think there are almost no anime that can touch this thing. I mean, this is like the only series where the power system is boring, the characters are boring, there isn't a millisecond of tactics or strategy because the protagonist always gets saved by some random video game system, but you cannot tell me that these fights are not some of the most epic beatdowns you've ever seen. That would be pure copium. Listen, I know I'm a hater, but I'm not blind. Anime's usual approach to fights is awesome for most stories. I mean, this way of doing things has given us some of the most iconic moments in anime history. There are fists, transformations, emotional breakthroughs, crazy displays of power. Fights where how the moment feels is the most important thing, where victory comes from digging deeper, believing harder, and refusing to give up. When people talk about these fights, they remember crying during Rengoku's death. They remember the goosebumps when Goku's hair turned gold. They remember the insanity of Jinwoo's attacks. They remember the hype and the emotional peak. The objective is to create all of this with character development, crazy moves, music, the character who digs deeper, who refuses to give up, who fights for something bigger than themselves. That's the person who wins. And that can be extremely inspiring because those are things that we want to do. And that's what we can relate to these characters. But here's the thing, this approach to fight can also have some pretty big downsides. The truth is, emotional peaks are powerful, but they don't last forever. You can only pull the dig deeper and fight hidden strength card so many times before it starts losing its, flavor. When every major fight ends with a willpower breakthrough, it becomes kind of predictable. You know that when things look really bad, the hero is gonna unlock something new, and the tension just kind of disappears because you've seen this script before. On top of that, your enjoyment of the fight strongly depends on things that don't happen during the fight necessarily. A lot of these fights hit hard because you know about the characters, what they've gone through, and who they are. If the story isn't super interesting, you might get fights that look good, but that's kind of it. On the other hand, Jujutsu Kaisen has been going in a different direction with its fights. Don't get me wrong, there are definitely a lot of hype moments, but there's a secret ingredient that makes things a little more interesting. And I think it's the secret ingredient that's made everyone love these fights. One of my favorite examples is Yuji versus Chozo. Chozo has an ability that can basically turn his blood into whatever he wants. Right off the bat, he's trying to keep Yuji at a distance by firing a super fast arrow. Yuji almost loses an arm blocking the first shot, only surviving because he twisted his body at the last possible second. He notices the patterns and tries different strategies. But Chozo is not an idiot. He beats Yuji in every single way and even anticipates some of his moves. He shapes his blood into a blade and puts it straight through Yuji's foot to pin him down. Yuji manages to get away, but he now has a hole in his arm and his foot. It's not looking good. He knows he can't continue fighting like this. But suddenly, his ally tells him that this technique has a weakness. Water. And Yuji immediately comes up with a plan. He runs into a public bathroom, starts the water alarms, and forces the fight into this new environment. Chozo follows him in, not realizing he just walked into a trap. And sure enough, when Chozo tries to use his technique again, it doesn't work. The fight turns into a classic martial arts showdown. For a second there, it looks like Yuji is going to win. But Chozo's not done yet. He reveals another trick. He had secretly hidden some of the blood in his clothes earlier to keep it dry. He flicks this concealed weapon straight into Yuji. They engage in a final close quarters exchange, but Yuji ultimately loses because Chozo managed to predict what he was going to do. This fight is honestly a perfect example of strategy. Using the environment, figuring out your enemy's technique, feinting. It shows JJK's realistic approach where even a brawler like Yuji has to think strategically at every step. Every single move they make has a smart reason behind it. Sukuna vs. Mahoraga is one of the most visually insane fights in the entire series, but it's also way more than that. Mahoraga is this creature who's kind of impossible to beat. It adapts to literally anything after seeing it once. For example, you hit it with fire, that wheel above its head turns, and boom, now it's immune to fire, and it's like nothing ever happened. So how the heck do you beat something that adapts to everything you do while you're fighting it? That's the problem Sukuna has to solve. If you haven't seen JJK, this is basically a bad guy who takes control of the main character's body. Cool. Sukuna doesn't just brute force his way through this. Sorry, I mean, he definitely does a lot of that, but he also watches, he observes, he counts. He's literally studying mid-fight. At some point, Sukuna starts using a slashing move over and over. And to defend itself, Mahoraga starts punching those slashes whenever it sees that move coming, kind of like using its arms as a shield. But then, Sukuna uses the same motion without actually firing a slash. It was a fake. And Mahoraga punches empty air because it's so used to it. And here's the crazy part. Later in the fight, Mahoraga lands a devastating attack, not because it was lucky, but because it also used a fake punch as a feint. It learned from Sukuna, adapted, and used his own tactic against him. Insanity. Oh wait, it's not over. Sukuna realizes that Mahoraga's adaptation takes a bit of time, and if he can overwhelm it faster than it can adapt, he might be able to win. So what does he do? He unleashes his most powerful technique, domain expansion. This ability slices everything inside a very large area. It's not one big attack that Mahoraga can adapt to. It's thousands of attacks per second, and it works perfectly. Before Mahoraga can regenerate or adjust to this, Sukuna finishes it off with one last blow. Sure, Sukuna is super strong, but his victory was about understanding his enemy and creating the perfect counter strategy. On the surface, this definitely looks like your typical epic battle, but when you actually break it down, this fight is a masterclass in problem solving. And finally, a few episodes later, we get Yuji and Todo versus Mahito, which is easily one of people's favorite fights in the entire series. Mahito is this guy with a technique where basically, if he touches you, you turn into one of these things. So one touch, and you're dead. Up until now, Mahito has been destroying Yuji in their 1v1, and that's when Todo shows up. His curse technique is called Boogie Woogie. He claps his hands to swap the position of any two things. Sounds pretty basic. At first, Todo claps his hands to switch his body with anything that's around him. It's a pretty classic way of using his power. But the interesting part starts when Yuji joins the fight. At that point, Todo starts to swap with him as well. And that's when we see some of the coolest and most unpredictable moves in the fight, such as Yuji throwing a stone and Todo swapping himself with the stone to throw a brutal kick with the speed created. After some time, he even starts clapping without actually swapping, just to mess with Mahito's timing. The enemy will dodge in one direction, expecting a swap, and nothing happens. Or Todo will clap and swap himself with a random piece of rubble instead of Yuji, creating this unexpected angle of attack. The technique becomes this constant psychological warfare where Mahito can never be sure if a clap means an actual swap or just a bluff. And then we get to the moment that made the entire JJK community collectively lose their mind. Mahito uses his domain expansion so quickly that Yuji and Todo literally can't react. This tiny moment lets Mahito touch Todo's hand, which activates his ability. Todo is about to die, but before it spreads to the rest of his body, he chops off his own hand without hesitation. He then slaps Mahito's hand with his other hand to trigger one final Boogie Woogie, positioning Yuji perfectly for a punch. This is a battle about outsmarting your opponent and perfectly synchronizing your attacks, rather than just overpowering them with strength. These fights are about understanding the opponent's techniques, identifying weaknesses in their abilities, exploiting the rules of the power system, and adapting faster than they can adapt. There's a good reason JJK fights are some of the most talked about battles in the entire anime and manga community. The series expects you to actually pay attention because there are so many small decisions being made during a fight. You can rewatch a battle and notice details and strategic moves that you hadn't seen before. The tension doesn't come from will the hero find the strength to win, it comes from how the heck is the hero going to solve this problem. And that feels completely different in my opinion. The series makes you feel good for actually understanding its fights, and there's this genuine satisfaction that comes from just getting it. When people talk about strategic fights, they remember the tactics. They remember the oh my goodness moments where the character does something so smart they didn't even think that was a possibility. But here's the question. Which of these two approaches is better? Well, if you want a fight that provides all the hype and emotional release possible, then the first approach is awesome. If you want a fight that has strategy and tactics, then the second approach can be a great choice. Neither of those two is automatically better, because at their core, they're all trying to do the same thing, make you feel something. But in that case, why do so many people enjoy JJK's fights specifically? I mean, this is definitely not the only series that adds strategy to its battles. Well, I think it's because Jujutsu Kaisen actually does both of these things. Chozo versus Yuji, Sukuna versus Mahoraga, Todo versus Mahito. Sure, all these fights have strategy and tactics, but they also have emotions and hype. The creators know that the strategy makes the emotions stronger. It doesn't just replace it. JJK's secret weapon is that it makes you think and feel at the same time. It rewards you for paying attention while still punching you in the gut. It gives you the satisfaction of solving a puzzle and the emotional release in the same fight. Of course, the anime really elevates everything, but this is just part of the series' DNA. Most anime pick one thing as their main approach, but Jujutsu Kaisen is one of these rare series that manages to bring everything to its absolute peak. The strategy that makes the fights rewarding, the emotional investment, and the epic scale. But what makes it even more special is that it refuses to stick to just one approach. Maki versus the Zenin clan is one of the best fights of season 3, but it's not really a tactical fight at all. It's not a puzzle. It's not about using weaknesses or adapting to anything. It's mostly about Maki, who's been looked down on her entire life, absolutely destroying the clan that rejected her. When Maki one-shots her dad, casually slides on blood, and defeats the most powerful sorcerer of her clan with nothing but her bare fists while funky music is playing in the background, we're not here trying to analyze her tactics. We feel the satisfaction of her being superior. What makes JJK special is that it understands you can have battles with tactics, you can have battles with emotions, and you can have battles with both of these things. This series knows that the most important part of an anime is its story, and that the best fights are the ones that perfectly fit each specific moment of each specific part of the journey.